day 23, and we're discussing emotional flexibility or emotional agility. Um, there's a trend in the corporate world where every behavior is designed and uh, is premeditated to produce a particular result. And that result is usually measured in pounds, shillings, and pence. Okay, so every action is about the profit, about the margin. It's about being successful in business. And part of that success is built upon your leadership style and how you apply yourself in the workplace, and how you, as some definitions of leadership suggest, make people do what you want them to do and do so willingly. Okay, so this is the precondition. And part of that in recent times, since Daniel Goleman's book in the 90s called Emotional uh, Intelligence, there's been a trend towards this kind of surface level um, stage show where leaders will pretend to care. They'll put on an act of being, emotionally in touch with their workforce, and it allows them to tick a box. And needless to say, it's bullshit. And you probably know this. If you've been on the receiving end of it, you know it. It's all surface level acting. What Irving Goffman said in the late 50s in his book, The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life. Surface level acting. I pretend, and I don't even pretend very well. The best of actors can put on a show and convince you, like Daniel Day Lewis, or who else is a good actor? There's very few of them out there, actually. Most of them are the same character in every movie. Anyway, you get the picture. So some people are capable of feeling it really, and others, you might not even be too far off by calling them psychopaths, because they're able to portray a particular emotion, at least on the surface, in a behavioral sense. But emotional intelligence or emotional agility, emotional flexibility is not that. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's about learning from experience and understanding that the person in front of you is a human being, just like you, who has needs, wants, desires, and all of those are valid and should be met. And they're not there in order to serve you. They're not a foot soldier. They're not a cog in the machine. They're not merely a means to get what you want. They're not a resource. As human resources departments everywhere will insist that they are, pretend that they're not, pretend that they care for their workers when really they don't. They're just there to execute the needs and demands and wants of the organization. This is true. I know because I've been there in larger corporates, and I've run businesses, and I've owned businesses. I've had employees, and I know what it's like to be on that side of the fence. It almost demands that you become cold to the needs of your people. They're merely there to execute your commands. This is the common idea in leadership. Emotional agility, emotional flexibility is the complete opposite. It's about running yourself first of all, in a humane way, in a way that you don't destroy yourself in the process, but you also have appreciation for others and their needs. So in leadership of yourself, leadership of others, working together on a team, is that you appreciate the needs of other people. It's also about recognizing your own triggers, being value based in your approach to your work. You remember session 8 that where we discussed value based goal setting. So we're not pursuing goals merely for the end result. The end result is a consequence of all the actions, the behaviors that you undertook along the way within the process. So it's not the outcome, it's the process. I've mentioned this before if you've been listening to the series. So it's about knowing what your values are, what you stand for, and making sure that they inform all your decisions. And so when you come from that position, you can maybe judge your emotional reaction a little bit differently. So you're not just flying off the handle, for example. And I don't mean you're holding back. I don't mean you're putting reins on the horses and holding yourself back because you're ready to explode and you refuse to explode because you know that's not the right thing to do. But I mean real change based upon your appreciation and understanding at a deeper, more profound level of what's going on and understanding where your emotional reaction comes from. So, your frustration, your irritation at someone being slow, or your anger at something not turning out the way you wanted it to be. Think about Kyrgios, the tennis player. He's a prime example of somebody who's completely out of control, who does not understand himself as a sports person at all, who has no clue how to change because he simply reacts on impulse. In many ways, people like him are stuck at 2 years of age and they don't know how else to react to conditions. They've been trained neurologically, emotionally, psychologically. They've trained themselves. The environment has trained them that this is how you should react. And until such time as there is almost a catastrophe, almost a complete teardown of this self-concept, well, then change doesn't happen. And unfortunately, that's what's required sometimes, is that your whole concept of yourself and the world needs to be rewritten in order for you to react differently. It's like, I know now. I can see now what's going on here. Okay. And you can then react and you can then behave in a way that's favorable to you, favorable to others. So emotional agility, just to sum this up, is not about putting on a show or a song and dance in order to tick a box. Emotional agility, despite the conditions, emotional agility is not about reining oneself in when you feel like breaking down. It's not about manipulation of yourself or anybody else. It's about waking up to the truth of the matter. You say, well, what is that? What do you mean by the truth? What is the truth? Well, the truth is different for everyone. And you know it when you feel it. And part of that process is stopping yourself in your tracks and doing some work and asking yourself the hard questions. Maybe you're working with a professional, with a coach or a therapist, psychoanalyst, or whatever happens to be, to dig into the reasons why you do what you do and you behave the way you behave, is to develop a greater understanding of oneself. You can do that through personality assessment and working with somebody. I don't mean doing a personality assessment online like a Myers-Briggs or some nonsense like that. I mean going through a proper and structured process with somebody who understands the background and maybe has been where you are. Developing emotional agility is a critical mental skill, and it's not something you decide to do. It's not something you say, okay, and then flick it on and off like you would a light switch. It's about putting yourself in the position where change can happen, where you're tired, you're sick and tired of the situation turning out the way it does, and you decide that maybe it's time to do something about it, and then you go and you seek some assistance or help with that. There's plenty of people out there. Some are good, like in all industries and all games. Some are good and some are not so good. Um, but there is help out there. Sometimes you can do it on your own, but oftentimes you'll get to where you want to go faster. So what I do with clients, for example, I'll probe and poke and I'll ask difficult questions. And sometimes clients don't like those difficult questions and they'll storm out or they'll leave and they'll never come back because I didn't ask the questions that they wanted me to ask, right? So for those people, it's not the right time, but maybe it is for you. So as an aside, if you're interested in figuring out or discovering the answer to those problems, get in touch and we'll have a chat. No commitment required. Um, it's a mental skill, emotional agility, being able to read one's emotions without flying off the handle. But again, it's not about reining yourself in and holding yourself under control. It's about understanding and empathy for yourself and for others. Uh, that's emotional flexibility. We'll be talking more about these concepts over the next 2 days. Emotional flexibility, emotional agility. We might talk a little bit more about Daniel Goleman and what he had to say about emotional intelligence, right? It's broadly the same kind of topic we're on. So for now, I'll leave you. And thanks for listening or watching if you're on YouTube or elsewhere. I'll see you next day. Mind yourselves.